Hello and welcome to the Dyno Six Pack Dynasty Football Podcast. We got a little bit of a continuation of the show that me and my buddy CK here did 2 weeks ago. So you haven't catch that first, you should go back and watch that first. Well, actually, no, watch us live here and then go back and watch that after. But first, we went over our top 5 rookies at each position. We're going to continue that on today and go through our top 6 through 12 at each spot. So kind of getting into the guys that are going to be looking more in your second, third rounds of your drafts. So before we get into that, man, CK, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, just plugging away content. We're here at the week of the combine for the NFL draft, and fantasy baseball season is in full swing. So I'm pretty busy right now, but hey, this is a good time of the year. I love it.
What division are you in for our website's big tournament?
Ooh, I think I'm in the Jim Tomey division, I believe is the one I'm in. You?
I'm in a Willie Mays.
Nice.
Yeah,
so I think I'm doing 3 drafts concurrently now. I'll add that one. So staying busy.
Nice. I haven't had any drafts yet, so I'll have that one coming up, I think, on like the 6th or whenever that starts. Yeah. And then I have 2 of them, one the Sunday before that opening series and then one Monday. So that I'm down to just 3 baseball leagues. So I'm like, all right, I'm at a good number right now. It's like nobody pressured me. Like originally when Joe first came and asked me to play in this tournament, I was just like, no, man, like I finally cut down leagues like can't. And he's just like, no, we need you. And I was like, fine, all right, 3 leagues it is then.
I won't pressure you. I promise. If I have an opening in my leagues, I'll be like, oh, I could ask JJ, but no, not
yeah. If you can ask, and I at first I'm like, let me see the roster. Okay. All right. Oh, one other thing too. So it's kind of like I said, before we get into this, I think it kind of ties together. Putting you on the spot here, but so a lot of the rookies we're talking about today, like I said, are going to be second, third round picks here. So I just made my first trade of the offseason on like an existing dynasty team. So I gave up DeAndre Swift, got back rookie picks 19 and 33, super flex tight end premium. How do you like that?
So 19, so you're looking at mid 2 and 33 is mid 3 for DeAndre Swift.
It's a 10-team league, so it's technically 209 and 403, but yeah, so it's 19 and 33.
I like it because Swift is a free agent, I believe, right? So we're not entirely sure where he's going to land, and I'm not sure he's shown enough in the NFL that it's a guaranteed he's going to land one of the 32 starting jobs there. Whereas in a 10-team league, that could be. There's so many receivers here. There's so many receivers that could be a really valuable pick. So, I like that move.
Yeah, I'm one of the running backs that maybe slides a little bit. Yeah, I felt like I was like, I kind of tried to get a little greedy. And I'm like, hey, how about throw me in a third too? And I was like, no, like a top 20 pick for Swift. Like that's a pretty good return at this point. I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, until we know where he lands. All those, this is the time where you can really make some trades in dynasty leagues and see what you're going to get, and it could pay off great. And if he ends up in Kansas City or something, it could look a little different in a couple months.
Right. No, hopefully we'll just hope he just doesn't do that. So we'll just forget about this trade. But all right, let's get it going here. We're actually, before we do though, fantasy6pack.net/plans, become an all access member over there. You're gonna need access to all of our rankings, which, as we mentioned before, fantasy baseball season right around the corner. So, like I know Joe just got his cheat sheet out. You're doing a ton of different shows, so you're gonna get all that stuff. You can come win some money with Keith and our guys Dave Eddy and Chris Robin on our DFS side. Like they are just cleaning house. On top of that, you get access to our Discord forum. We're in there. We can answer questions tailored to your fantasy leagues. It's a good time. One of the best bangs for your bucks out of all the fantasy websites out there. Again, that's fantasy6pack.net/plans. All right, let's get into the meat of the show here now. So first things first, we're going to go quarterbacks here. So just before we get into this real quick, recap your top 5 from next week, and then who are your top, we'll go 6, 7, 8. We'll go 3 at a time.
So my top 5 were Caleb Williams was number 1. For fantasy, I have Jaden Daniels, number 2. I love the floor of the rushing upside. Drake May's 3. JJ McCarthy is 4. Michael Penix was 5 for me. And then the 6 and 7, I have Bo Nix, and 7, I have Michael Pratt.
Okay, so we're in the same there. Michael Pratt is my 7, Bo Nix is 6. So same there. And then what about 8, 9, 10? How do you go through there?
8, I have Spencer Rattler. 9, I have Jordan Travis, who's going to miss a substantial part of this year injured. And 10, I have Joe Milton.
Okay, so we differ a little bit 9 and 10. I have Rattler 8 as well. He's kind of one of the guys you put me on a little bit. He's going to rise at the Senior Bowl. You told me that I think a month or 2 before it happened, and then sure enough, that's what he did. And then I have Milton number 9 and Jordan Travis 10. So let's go and circle back to the top here. Up at the top, we got Bo Nix here. So just barely missed that top 5. I think we both had Michael Penix just barely sneaking in there. So what had him just a little bit lower for you? Why is he kind of just outside that top 5?
So I have Bo Nix in a tier with Penix, just to clarify here. So it's
Mhm.
Penix, Bo Nix, and Michael Pratt are all in a tier for me. For me, it is the fact that while he was at Auburn, he struggled. And then he got to an Oregon offense that's perfectly tailored for the way he plays. And that is extremely shallow passes where he's very accurate. He's very good at it, but we don't see him. You almost never see him push the ball into specifically the intermediate routes, like 10 to 20 yards. He almost never targets that. You'll see him throw a few deep balls to Troy Franklin, who's a receiver we'll talk about in a little bit, but typically it's a lot of short passes. And if it's the first read isn't open, he's pulling it and running, which is perfect for his skill set. He's actually very athletic. He can pick up yards with his feet, but he's rarely asked to really read a defense. He's one look, maybe gets to the second read. And if it's not open, he's pulling it down and running, which works in college. I want to see if you can read a full defense. Can you scan the field? I just don't see that out of Bo Nix. I've seen some hype of Bo Nix as a top 20 pick. I have him firmly day two. And if you told me that you like Michael Pratt more or Spencer Rattler, I get that. I think the floor for Bo Nix is very low.
So kind of taking a step back from last year. So we had like Will Levis went at the top of the second, Hendon Hooker kind of top of the third. Where do you kind of rank Bo Nix as a prospect kind of compared to those two?
I should pull up my last year's rankings. I believe I would have Bo Nix probably in the Hendon Hooker range for me because it's another one where he was running a wide open offense too, and his was a lot of deep throws, right? But they were so open. You'd see Jalen Hyatt running 3 yards clear of everybody on that team, and it was okay. He can hit this throw, and then he had the injury concern, of course. But I have a hard time seeing Bo Nix's game translating to the NFL. He's gonna have to sit for a while, and Will Levis sat for half a season, stepped up, looked okay at times, but there were also down the stretch he looked very much like a rookie who struggled. And if you told me that Bo Nix is asked to play next year, it's hard for me to envision him being very successful right away.
Yeah, he's very situation dependent. I don't really see myself getting him in most drafts. Just where I'm at here on the West Coast is I have a lot of Oregon fans in a lot of my leagues, so he's naturally going to go a little bit higher just because of that. And then there's like 4 or 5 offenses, or I think if he landed there, I'm like, okay, that's like a little interesting. Like kind of like if he lands as like a backup for a year with like the Rams or something, like with McVay, like, okay, that could be kind of interesting in a year or two. But yeah, he's very system dependent. Michael Pratt, man. So that's my guy that I kind of like out of the deeper guys here. I actually have him in the same tier as Bo Nix. And of course, this was for fantasy. Big body, 6'3", 220. He's able to kind of dish out hits a little bit. So he's not one of those guys you have to worry about taking hits and get it injured. Like he can dish it out as well. A little bit of a project as a passer, but I mean, he reminds me of some of the other guys that have came in that have been rough, that have had that raw like athleticism, that have figured it out. Obviously, it's a guy you're not going to spend top 2 pick on. You're looking at more like 3rd, 4th round in your super flex leagues, most likely. And unless he gets really big draft capital. But he's the guy that I think for fantasy leagues to be a sleeper, especially for super flex leagues. What do you like and what do you kind of dislike about Michael Pratt's game?
I think that he anticipates routes a lot better than Bo Nix does. So Bo Nix, I said he's hitting the open receivers, but Michael Pratt is calling out protections for his defense. He is more NFL ready than a lot of the quarterbacks that we've talked about. He's not a big time runner, but he can also pick up first downs with his legs. I think that's an undervalued part of his game. He kind of reminds me, he has kind of a low release point, so he gets a lot of balls batted down at times. And I think it kind of sometimes affects his downfield accuracy because he throws it not sidearm, but it's more like an advanced 3/4. And it just kind of causes the ball to float in the air a little longer than you want. I think he's just really solid. He doesn't have a single super hard carrying tool. There's not something where you look at and say he's got a huge arm or he's a great runner. But this is the type of guy where you talk about systems. If San Francisco drafted him and they said, okay, well, Brock Purdy is going to, get too expensive for us to keep, and we're going to let him sit on the bench and sit a year, and then we'll be fine turning to Michael Pratt. I think he could really be good in the NFL.
Yep, he's a project guy, and I think like most likely he's probably going to be more of like a high level backup. Like I don't think he's ever like a long term answer starter, but he's a guy that like a Gardner Minshew, if he finds a few weeks where he's a starter, he's probably going to put up fantasy numbers. So in those super flex leagues, anything 12 deep 12s to 16 and on, he's definitely need to be owned. So 9-10, I had Milton and Travis. You had Travis and Milton. Do you really see much for them for fantasy purposes, or do you think that they're just kind of more like project backups at the NFL level?
Jordan Travis is more interesting to me than Joe Milton. I do like some of the things Jordan Travis did. Unfortunately, he's a little older. He's 24. He started his career at Louisville before ending up at Florida State. And then, kind of like Hendon Hooker, he's likely to not play much this year. He had the injury to his left leg, which required surgery. I think he's smart. I think he's a pretty accurate passer in the underneath. He doesn't have a very big arm. It's another one. It would have to be a system fit. You mentioned Gardner Minshew. It's a shorter quarterback, kind of like Gardner Minshew, who I think could come in and be serviceable for an NFL offense. I don't think there's a team that's drafting Jordan Travis expecting him to be a starter for them. And Joe Milton, I think he's going to light up the combine this week. I think he'll probably throw 75, 80 yards. If you haven't seen Joe Milton play, he arguably will have the second biggest arm in the league. I think the second he gets drafted behind Josh Allen. It is that type of an arm, but it also is extraordinarily inaccurate. It is all over the place, scattershot.
No matter how far down the field you are, they're freaking lazy.
He does not know how to. He doesn't know how to throttle it down. I think I compared it on one of the shows I did. I compared it to a golfer, right? If you have to hit a 100-yard shot and you know your ball's it's 100 yards, you just swing full. Well, in his case, he never gets to fully unleash his arm because he doesn't have time to hold the ball that long. So he's always trying to hit. It's like trying to hit half shots or harder in golf. And he's always trying to hit half shots essentially with his arm, and he just can't control it. So he'll be fun to watch at the combine, but it's such a project there that I'm sure he'll get drafted. But there's no way that you can start Joe Milton. An NFL team can start Joe Milton in the next probably 2 years at minimum.
Yeah. He's a guy that like my 16 team super flex leagues, like I'm going to have him in my taxi squads just because like just the tools, like if some coach could get his hands on him and like, all right, you're going to spend 3 full seasons on the bench and we're just going to kind of mold you. Like the raw talent, like the tools he have are there. It's just everything else around that. They kind of got to tighten it up for him there. And then Jordan Travis, I don't know. There's nothing really wowed me when I watched him on field. Nothing popped out. Just kind of seemed very, very average. Had really good weapons around him. So I kind of thought I'd be more wowed when I watched him. Just kind of came away wanting more from him. For me, 11, 12, Sam Hartman, Devin Leary. I don't see any of them ever really being fantasy relevant. Who's your 11, 12? And then any thoughts on those two?
So I have Hartman at 13, actually. It's a classic case of someone who's going to probably get maybe drafted late, maybe a UDFA, and then be a clipboard holder for his career and probably become a coach someday. I don't think Sam Hartman's ever likely to start too many NFL games. I actually have Austin Reed from Western Kentucky at 11. He kind of runs another. I mean, we've seen the Western Kentucky offense with Bailey Zappi, where it's very much an air raid attack, and Austin Reed can get the ball out in a hurry. I'm not sure his arm is NFL caliber. And then I actually have Tua Tagovailoa's brother, Talia Tagovailoa, at 12 from Maryland.
Okay.
I like some of the things that Talia does, but it's very inconsistent. He's another one where there's times when you're watching him and you're like, wow, that's really impressive. You can really get the ball out. It's on time. And there's other times I feel like he peaks at the pass rush too often and he gets his head down. And then by the time he tries to react to where his receivers are, he just gets frazzled back there and he doesn't know what to do. So just like you said, I don't plan to have, even in a very deep league, I'm unlikely to draft either of those two players.
Yeah, I'm with you there. What's up, Chris? We were actually just talking about you earlier. I was telling people to come become members and come win some money with you guys playing some DFS. So good to see you. Let's see. Anybody else quarterback you want to talk about? I think let's see. Austin Reed. I have him at like 14. Carter Bradley at 13. But again, I'm not really expecting much from either of them fantasy wise. They're just more guys that maybe be in the XFL in a year or two or whatever they're calling it now.
One quarterback I do want to mention who I'm not drafting him, but just watch it, is Jason Bean from Kansas. You're talking incredible athleticism here. This is the type of player who can run for 500-600 yards, I think, as a quarterback, which is intriguing. Now, he has not even always been the starter at Kansas. Jalen Daniels is going to be the starter there this year. He's been dealing with back injuries on and off for the past couple of years, but Jason Bean, when we'd fill in, you see the athleticism. He has a pretty big arm. I don't think he's likely to get drafted, but just remember the name.
Good to know. I have not watched him yet, but I'll put him in my queue of guys next to throw in there just so I can kind of have some idea on him. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's kick it over to the running back position here. And for me, this is where I feel like I'm going to be living. I don't know that I'm going to be trading up and paying the price for the top 5 running backs, but I feel like I'm going to be sitting back at the end of the second, start of the third, just picking these guys off in a lot of my real leagues. So real quick, recap your top 5 and then go ahead and start off with just like your first couple here at 6-7.
My top 5. Number 1 is the injured Jonathan Brooks right now from Texas. I still have him 1. Number 2, I have Trey Benson from Florida State. Number 3, I love what Bucky Irving offers out of Oregon. 4, I have Blake Corum. And 5, I have Braylon Allen.
Okay. And then for me,
6,
sorry. Go ahead.
You go. No, you go.
Oh, yeah. So for me, we got same top 3, Brooks, Benson, Irving. And then I go Allen and then Corum. So same top 5, just flip-flopping 4 and 5 there. All right. And then now, before I so rudely interrupted you, go ahead with your number 6, 7, 8.
So 6 is my guy. I've been texting you about him for a while here. This is Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. I am pretty much all in. 7, I have Audric Estime from Notre Dame. And 8, I have Ray Davis from Kentucky.
Okay, so we got a little bit of a mix here. So this is the first time we've kind of had some big differences here. So for me, number 6, I got Marshawn Lloyd. It's funny. He's the guy that I watched. So generally, like when I first go through my first try and get 2 or 3 all 22 films kind of watch before I kind of put him in a ranking spot. And he's one of them that I had lower. I think I had him down at like 12 or 13. And I don't know if I just picked random games. I don't know if I just picked bad ones, but I came back through, watched 2 more, and I'm like, holy cow! Like I don't know what I missed on him, but I got him up to 6 now. So Marshawn Lloyd there. Number 7, we got Ray Davis, and then I got 8, Dylan Johnson. He's the guy that I feel like I was a little bit on an island with. Like I came away watching this film and I was like, man, there's something here. He is good. And then there's finally one other guy I found out there that's high on him, and it was Matt Waldman. And I'm like, all right, man, if he is in on Dylan Johnson, then I'm at least my eyes aren't completely out of off base there. So he's the guy number 8, and if I'm finding compared to like a lot of the consensus ranks, unless he gets like a big day 2 draft capital, like I think I'm going to end up with him in a lot of third rounds of leagues this year. So what do you think about those top 3? And then just kind of any quick thoughts about your guys you had there?
Well, your Dylan Johnson, where you're going to get him in the 3rd round, is going to be my Jalen Wright. I think every one of the mocks you've done, I've gotten him in the 3rd round because I'm just really high on him. I think I wish we would have gotten to see him at the Senior Bowl. He was hurt. I think he's going to come out this week at the Combine and run in the mid 4.3s. I think he's that type of an athlete. I think he can be I'm not sure he's going to be an every down back in the NFL, but I think that if you told me he lands in specifically a zone blocking scheme where they can utilize his one cut and go ability, I think he could be really good, really early. We each had Ray Davis in that section. It's a great story for those who don't know it. Growing up homeless to being 1,000-yard back at multiple SEC schools.
Jimmy Butler type story for him.
It's awesome. The one of the dudes that you absolutely want to pull for. And he plays like a guy who's just trying to get it. Like he's fighting for every inch of ground out there. He cuts, he gets upfield in a hurry. He runs really well behind his pads. I love Ray Davis. I think he's going to be really good in the NFL.
He's been effective on 3 different teams now too, where he's basically came in and ran for 1,000 yards on 3 different teams too. So like just
and like some of those are not good teams either. Temple, no love to anybody who loves Temple here, or Vanderbilt in the SEC. Those are tough teams to succeed at, and he did, and then just kept going up in competition. That's a good sign. I like that. If you can prove that you can get better with competition and continue to be good, now you're going to the NFL. Competition is going to get harder, but at this point, you just keep proving people wrong. And then I like Audric Estime from Notre Dame.
He's my number 9.
And so I think he can be a 3-down back. I think he can catch. I think another one. I like that he gets upfield in a hurry. Yeah. I think that he can be a early down back for an NFL team. Now you mentioned some of your guys. I have Marshawn Lloyd at 9, so it's not far different here. So I have Marshawn Lloyd at 9. I love Marshawn Lloyd's footwork. I think he has incredibly quick feet. My only concern and I don't say it's a concern, I think he's probably going to go early day 3, and I could see him getting early day snaps in the NFL. But my concern with Marshawn Lloyd is, why did no team ever give him the ball more? I just want to know. At USC, I get it. You had Caleb Williams, but before that, he's at the other USC with pre-Spencer Rattler days at South Carolina, and they just refused to give him the ball. So is it a knock on him? I don't know. I don't know if he wears out, but when he think he's averaged almost 9 yards per carry in his career. That's insane.
And that's how like some ridiculous, like 16 yards a catch or something like that this year.
He is a big play waiting to happen. So I get that. And you have Dylan Johnson. I have Dylan Johnson at 10. So we're not too far off here. Dylan Johnson, I agree. It seems like it's just kind of quietly been a good player at Washington, but it's been overshadowed by Penix, and then
Yeah,
Roma
Odunze.
Dunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. That's 3 receivers plus a quarterback that just seem to have stolen all of the fire there, and he was just quietly great.
Yep. So my 9 and 10, we got the same overall top 10. I got estimate 9, Jalen Wright, number 10. And Jalen Wright's another one. So like I went through, watched 2 games on him, had him up, I think, at number 6 last time, went back and watched 2 other. I don't know if it was more like the games I watched of him after, if it was more the other guys around him, like the Marshawn Lloyds, the Dylan Johnsons, where I came away more impressed, but dropped him down a little bit there. But man, it's weird. I've gone from thinking that this is kind of a weak running back class to where it's like, I think there's just a lot of committee backs in here. I think there's actually gonna be a lot of guys that are like decent RB2s and flex plays. They're just gonna go a little bit later. You don't have to wait on them a little bit. Who do you round out your top 12 with? Who's your 11 and 12?
11, I have Cody Schrader from Missouri, and 12, I have Dylan Lobby from New Hampshire.
Okay, nice. So I have both of them outside of my top 12. So I got Will Shipley, and then Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State. So you had Cody Schrader from Missouri. He's a fun watch too. I have him right outside number 13. So he would be my next guy on the list. What do you like about him?
I like how physical he is. He wants to get another one, runs really low behind his pads, very compact, picks up a lot of yards. Another one showed that he can transfer up, came from the Division II level, transferred to the SEC and led the league in rushing yards. That's impressive. Actually, pretty good hands there. He reminds me of like a bigger, stockier Danny Woodhead, kind of like Rex Burkhead type of player. If you remember Rex Burkhead, he reminds me of that a lot. I think he can operate as a third down back in the NFL, but I also think you want to tell me that he got 15 carries a game. I think he'd be pretty effective with that.
Yeah, we got another Schrader fan here. A lot of the stuff you said about Schrader is kind of what I like about Isaiah Davis. 6'1", 220, not afraid to lower the shoulder. There's a lot of Isaiah Pacheco in his game. When I watch him, it's kind of what I see. He's very physical. So I do like him. And then Will Shipley, man, I think we've talked about him before. One of the stuff that I came away most impressed with, like watching him like operate as like a receiver, like moving him out to the slot and then actually running like full actual routes, like not just kind of like little angles and ins and outs. Like he's out there running real routes. Just, today's NFL, you're a running back that can catch passes like, Theo Riddick or Gio Bernard your way into fantasy success, deeper RB2 there. So big fans of both of those guys there. Who are some other guys that just barely missed for you that you like?
Well, I should talk about Dylan Lobby. Some of the stuff you said about Will Shipley is the same reason I like Lobby, where he can operate as receiver. At the Senior Bowl, they had him playing receiver, and I think that he is the type of player that, once again, I could see him being probably a third down back in the league, but going out and making a lot of catches right away. I like Frank Gore. He's extremely undersized, but all he did was catch the ball, run the ball, pass the ball. He was literally the entire offense for Southern Mississippi, and it was still hard to stop him. He reminds me of remember Lynn Bowden from Kentucky, who kind of would do everything weapon. That's who he reminds me of.
He's like this guy. He got traded his rookie year before like the first game, even, right? Like the Raiders took him in the 3rd and then traded him for like a 6th, like a month later or something.
I believe that's
like
right.
That. Yeah.
I have Isaiah Davis at 14, and then I actually still have Rasheen Ali at 15. Ali was looking really good, but then I don't remember what he hurt at the Senior Bowl, but I believe he tore his bicep is what he tore at the Senior Bowl. So we're not going to get to see him, but I think these are late day 3 guys in the NFL draft and probably players that you can get very last pick in your dynasty draft, maybe even as free agents who have potential to help your dynasty team early.
Yeah. Of course I looked this name up before, and now that I'm on the spot, I'm second guessing myself, but as Dajon Edwards from Georgia, Dajon Edwards, he's number 13 number 14 for me. So I have him just behind Cody Schrader there. He's the guy that I like for his pass catching ability. Buried, not buried, but deep depth chart there. And then they spread the ball around at Georgia anyways, because there's so much talent there. But he's the guy that I think similar things. I think he could turn into a third down back, pass catching ability there, and going to get him on the field pretty close to right away, or as a depth piece, I would imagine there. Anyone else you want to talk about here before we move on over to the pass catchers?
No, let's go to pass catchers.
All right, this is where the fun's at anyways, here in the 6 to 12 range for me. All right, so go ahead and recap your top 5 and then go ahead and give us your first couple here.
My number 1 is Marvin Harrison Jr., and 2 is Malik Neighbors, and 3 is Roma Dunze. I think that's, I don't want to say it's standard, but that seems to be kind of becoming a consensus at this point. Number 4, I go back to LSU. I have Brian Thomas. I like the size and the athleticism. 5, I still have Keon Coleman. I know there's been some knocks about his separation ability. I just think he's a physical marvel, and that you just deal with that. An NFL team drafts him and says, we can teach you how to run some routes and get open, and he could be a real star at the NFL level if he gets it figured out. 6, I have Adonai Mitchell from Texas. I want to like him a little more. There are flashes of absolute greatness there, but it doesn't always show up on film. Kind of the ball of clay. And then 7, I have Troy Franklin. He's great at the intermediate and deep throws. Sometimes I wish he, on a team like Oregon, where I talked about how they operate underneath, there's times where underneath I feel like he gets bumped off his route. He's just not extremely aggressive. He reminds me a lot of Jamison Williams, who's seemed to have a little slower time transitioning to the NFL, but I like Troy Franklin. I feel like at 7, I feel like I'm low on him, but I could easily see an NFL team taking him in the first round, and I'd be more than happy to take him with a top 2-round pick in a dynasty draft.
Definitely. Yeah, I've noticed the same thing, Jamie. Keon Coleman, a lot of the mocks we've done, he's been falling. Like I can remember the very first time we did it, I think he went at like 110. And I don't think I've seen him go like early second since then, honestly. So it's kind of interesting seeing him slide after not doing anything in the offseason. Really kind of weird. But for me, we had the same top 3. Harrison, Neighborhood, Dunze, like you said, pretty standard at this point. I have Troy Franklin number 4, and I actually have him in the same tier as Dunze. Like I kind of was going back and forth, and I'm like, I kind of want to, like, I'd watch a couple Franklin games, I move him ahead of Dunze, I go back and watch Dunze, I move him back up. So they're tiered up for me. Then I got number 5, Brian Thomas, and then kicking over to my top 3 for the next group. Number 6, we got Xavier Worthy from Texas, Keon Coleman number 7 for me, and then I got Ladd McConkey from Georgia number 8. So what stands out to you there for those 3?
So Ladd McConkey is an incredible route runner to start with. Yeah. Ladd McConkey, and then he gets pigeonholed into being an underneath receiver, and he's not. He really isn't. He can win at all 3 levels of the field, and he's proven that out time and again. He's actually pretty good with the ball after the catch too, getting the ball in his hands and making plays with it. So I get Ladd McConkey. I have Ladd McConkey at 9, so just out of where we're talked about right now. You mentioned Xavier Worthy. So I had Xavier Worthy at 8, so we're not far off there either. Xavier Worthy is going to be someone who I just want to see what he weighs. I want to see how big really is he. Because if he comes in at this combine and is 5'8 and a half and 165 pounds, honestly, I wouldn't be completely shocked at that. He is rail thin.
Yeah.
And that he doesn't win the same, because Tank Dell was that small last year, right? And and he was shifty, right? His is more shifty, whereas Xavier Worthy is just pure speed, which could he easily go out then and at that size run a 4.28? I think it's possible. I think he could be like around 4.3 for a 40-yard dash, but I know he's fast, and at that size, that would struggle. So if he came out and he's 5'10", 180 pounds, I'd probably bump him up some spots. I just really am concerned right now about what his actual size is, because he kind of reminds me of Deshaun Jackson, right? Like you at the top end, you get Deshaun Jackson, but remember whatever happened to Tyquan Thornton, because he was all speed too.
Atwell at the bottom.
Tutu Atwell, right?
Yeah.
There's just a really big range of outcomes for me for Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I can see that. It's just what the good that he does do. It just reminds me of like a Devonta Smith that I'm out there watching. And of course, that's like a lazy comp, because that's like the most recent like skinny receiver we've had that turned out being good. But just the way that they play, like he's not as refined as Devonta Smith was. Like he was one of the better like all around receivers I've watched. But a lot of similarities in the way that they play there. Keon Coleman for me, just I mean, if you like your old school like Dez Bryant type winners, like this is your guy right here. He's going to go up. He's going to go up one-on-one. He's going to be able to make those catches. And then for Ladd McConkey, I mean, when you're talking about a guy that's like shifty, like Tank Dell, like I feel like there's more Tank Dell to Ladd McConkey's game than there is to Xavier Worthy for sure. Just like you mentioned, just that route running ability, just good luck keeping up on him. And of course, it's a little bit different when you're watching him, run routes out there in shorts. But like, man, he was making those cornerbacks just look like foolish out there. Like, and so I mean, yeah, he's the type of guy today's NFL. I think that there's a role for him. So for me, number 9, I had A.D. Mitchell from Texas. And then I got Devontae Walker, number 10, Malachi Corley, 11, and Xavier Legette, number 12. Who are your ones you round out with, and then anything stand out from there?
So we're going to have some different names here. So I think I stopped at 7. So my 8 was Xavier Worthy. 9 was Ladd McConkey. So some players you'd already talked about. 10, I have Malachi Corley. Okay. 11, Roman Wilson. And 12, I have Ricky Pearsall. So we get some different names in this group here.
So I have Wilson number 13, so just barely missed there, but I have Pearsall down at 20, so I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say on him.
I think Ricky Pearsall is Ladd McConkey slightly light. I think that they're very similar, where I think he can win it. I think he has incredible hands, absolutely incredible hands. He almost never drops the ball. And I think we've seen him win at all 3 levels of the field. He was effective as a slot receiver, essentially, at Arizona State, transferred to Florida, and this year competed in the SEC, made consistent catches. Another one went to the Senior Bowl, won consistently, won reps out there. I bumped Ricky Pearsall up. I like what I see out of Ricky Pearsall. I went back and watched some film after the Senior Bowl. I think I watched at least 2 games, Georgia, and I forget the other one, and I bumped him up. So I am pretty excited about what I see out of Ricky Pearsall.
Weirdly, I remember like almost being more impressed last year watching Anthony Richardson. Like Pearsall would be popping on a lot of the stuff there. I'm like, man, who's that guy? And so yeah, I'll have to go back and rewatch him here. I have him like at the number 20, like right behind Jalen McMillan. So I'll have to maybe go back and recheck those guys out there. And then so who you said you have Xavier Legette up there as well too, or Corley?
I do not have Xavier Legette up there. I have Malachi Corley at 10. Okay. So my concern with Malachi Corley is Rondale Moore, because that is who he was in college, right? Where Rondale Moore caught so many passes behind the line of scrimmage for Purdue and got drafted in the 2nd round, I think, by the Cardinals as just this, okay, well, all you have to do is get the ball in his hands and he can make something happen. And it hasn't translated. Malachi Corley's makes so many catches behind the line of scrimmage. The guy's nickname is Yak God, which is fantastic. Yeah, great nickname. Because all they do is give him screen and let him pick it up. And the comparisons are there to Deebo Samuel because he's this really thickly built receiver. And I think at the top end, it's possible you get that. But I want to see, does he have a route tree? Because we have seen maybe 2 routes at all.
Gives me pause. Yep. Yeah. Very, very simple route tree that he ran there.
Yes. And so I want to see, can this guy attack anywhere other than within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage? Can he get down the field? Can he move in the middle? Because he's just not been asked to do that. Maybe he can. And if he shows that, I'll be more than happy to bump him up. But right now, we haven't seen it. So as productive as he was at Western Kentucky, I think he led the nation in receiving yards. I know he did as his last year. So he's shown that, but it's such a weird offense that it's hard to see how it translates all right away. So I have him at 10. I could move him up if we see a little more, and I could move him down too.
Okay. And then so you don't have Legette or Devontae Walker up there in your top 12. Where do those 2 come in for you?
So I have Devontae Walker at 13 and Xavier Legette at 14.
Okay. So not too far off then, just kind of right outside the fringe there.
Or wait, I have 15 and 16. I miscounted. 15, There's 2 in between here. 15 and 16. Devontae Walker, I moved down off of the Senior Bowl work and going back. I get a little bit of the MVS vibes with him where he gets open deep, but you got to catch the ball. You got to catch the ball. And he's big, he's fast, but if you're not bringing in the ball for me, you're not helping me. And Xavier Legette, so he came into the Senior Bowl saying he listed at 6'4". He measured 6'1.5". That's a big difference. 6'4", you're exceptional. 6'1.5", you're big, but the NFL is full of receivers 6'1.5". And he doesn't really separate well. We talk about Keon Coleman not separating. Xavier Legette does not separate at all. You know, he can win in college like that. In the NFL, his hands are kind of inconsistent. And I just have a hard time seeing how this guy who had 1 year of production, he was there for 5 years, 4 years. He was a ghost at South Carolina. And then he explodes on the scene this year. It's hard for me to move him ahead of players who I just think have done it more. So I have players like Jamari Thrash, who we didn't talk about. I love Jamari Thrash. I have him at 13. He's won at another guy transferred up a level. I think he's extremely quick underneath. I will take Jamari Thrash and his consistent hands over Xavier Legette. And does Xavier Legette have a higher upside? Probably, because he's just bigger. But I also think he has a massively lower floor.
Agree with that. Jamie says he's got Roman Wilson at wide receiver 6, wanting to go above Thomas and Franklin. All right, I'm going to have to go back and maybe rewatch him. I might be a little bit low on him at 13. The other guy I kind of wanted to talk about here before we got out of here, and my number 14 guy, and he's a guy that just the more I watch, the more impressed I become, and that's Malik Washington. Where does he come in for you?
So I have Malik Washington. I have him at 18 out of Virginia. I like some of the things like Washington offers, whereas he's very good operating underneath. I think he's kind of going to be a possession receiver in the league. It's hard for me. I want to see what his speed score is. How fast can he get down the field? That's my concern with Malik Washington.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I did last year, like I definitely had a type. Like I was all over the Tank Dell, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers group last year. So I definitely have a little bit of type.
You did a good job.
Yeah, it worked for me last year. And I kind of get similar vibes from like Washington, like Kmart, Zay Flowers is kind of how I'd comp him a little bit. Like I think that there's going to be a role for him in the NFL. He does a little bit of everything well. A little bit of an older prospect, if I'm remembering right, I believe, because he transferred. Because he played for Michigan State before, right? Because he outproduced Jaden Reed, I'm pretty sure, on the same team. So another guy that's been productive on a couple of different areas there. Anybody else you wanted to touch on outside your top 12 here?
Well, I should talk about Jamie mentioned in the chat, Javon Baker. I actually have Javon Baker right behind Xavier Legette there. That's the one I have between Xavier Legette. Another one. I very agree that he could absolutely be the steal of drafts. I agree with that. I've been close. I might move Javon Baker ahead of some of the players we talked about, Devontae Walker, Xavier Legette. Transferred from Alabama, just wasn't playing there. That's not necessarily a massive knock against him. That's the team that had Jamison Williams and Devonta Smith, and I believe that was both on that team. And so he transferred to UCF, and all he did was consistently win reps at both underneath and deep. I love the deep speed there, and I think he's a very good route runner. So I like Javon Baker. I like the call there. I'm not sure. The T. Higgins comp is a little interesting, but Devonta Smith, yeah, I see some of that. We should probably mention Johnny Wilson quickly here too.
Future tight end Johnny Wilson.
That's what I want to know. Does he get tight end? If he gets drafted and they say you're going to play tight end and he gets that eligibility, then I'm interested. Otherwise, I have a feeling he's going to turn into the Devin Funchess mold or Kelvin Benjamin, just these really big receivers who can't. He's got speed, but it takes him so long to get going. He just doesn't explode out of his brakes like you want. But once he gets up to top speed, he eats up space is what he can do. So I like Johnny Wilson. If he gets drafted and they say we're going to try him at tight end and he gets that eligibility, then I'll be even more interested.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect transition into our tight ends here. Let's go ahead and do that. So So before we get into our 6 through 12 and we're capping our 1 through 5, if he was tomorrow, he has tight end eligibility, where would he slot in for you in this top 12?
Among tight ends?
Yep.
3.
Go 3, right? Okay, right behind them. That's probably about right. I mean, that's where it kind of starts to get a little bit iffy for me there. So go ahead and recap. Who was your top 5, and then I guess go ahead and give us everyone you think will be fantasy relevant here to start off in this group. Because for me, like there's like just a couple here that I feel like we even really need to spend too much time on here. So you go ahead and take the lead here. I struggle with tight ends in general, and that's definitely the position I've had like the least success grading, like rookie to NFL. So I'll let you kind of take the lead on this one here. Recap your 5, and then tell us who do we need to know this deep.
I have Brock Bowers 1. He is, if you're talking a tight end premium league, if you wanted to go as high as 2, I get it. I think the second he gets drafted in the NFL, he's probably a top 10 redraft tight end this year and top 5 dynasty tight end right away. He is a real weapon. I know we talked last time. What's the difference between him and Kyle Pitts? I still like Kyle Pitts. I'm still in. I'll go down with that ship. And I think if Brock Bowers gets in a good situation, the Chargers, the Titans, he could be a real star from the beginning. JT Sanders is my 2, Jatavian Sanders from Texas, another very athletic tight end. I think he's going to get day 2 NFL draft capital and should be the second tight end off in dynasty drafts. I have Ben Sinnott at 3, and I believe I comped him to Chris Cooley last time. I think he's a do everything type of option who can operate out of the backfield. I think he could catch 50 balls. Maybe not the first year in the league, but I think he's got that type of upside. 4, I have Cade Stover. I think an NFL teams are going to love Cade Stover. Maybe more of an NFL option than fantasy option, but I do think he can be an option underneath for a team. 5, I have Dalen Holker from Colorado State. I think that he's a downfield option. 6, Bryson Nesbitt from North Carolina. I believe one of the early preview pods that we did together a few months ago, I talked about how I liked Bryson Nesbitt as more of the receiving option. I'm not sure that he is a traditional tight end ever, but big slot. That's basically what he played at North Carolina. And I think he can catch passes in the NFL. Jaheim Bell, I have at 7. He's a tight end in name only. I know you have him a little higher, and I get that because it's just such a rare size for a tight end where he is smaller than Johnny Wilson. He's smaller than Keon Coleman, who are playing receiver on his team.
We're playing, on the same team. Yep.
So if he gets into a team that is willing to use him in a unique way, I mean, the easy one is to say San Francisco, but there are others where if they found a way to get him onto the right team, I could move him as high as 3 on this. I just want to see how an NFL team values him first, because it's just such a weird size profile. Theo Johnson, I have at 8. I think there is fantasy upside with Theo Johnson from Penn State. He's a great athlete. I think he's going to crush the combine this week. And I do think that in the right situation, there is fantasy upside. Probably not this year. Until this past season, it was always kind of a wait and see with tight ends, but so many of them came out and were just great from the outset. Laporta and Kincaid and the 2 Packers guys, right? That it just kind of rethought the way we think about it. But and then the last, I suppose, fantasy relevant one, I'll skip a couple. Jared Wiley from TCU, a Texas transfer, and came to TCU and just consistently caught passes over the middle of the field for decent yardage. And I think he's another one. I'm just going to watch the landing spot. I'm not saying I'm probably going to draft more than maybe 4 or 5 of these guys in a fantasy draft, but landing spot's real key with tight ends. And if some of them get the right spot, I'll push them up my rankings.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had one other guy that I don't think you mentioned, Theo Johnson from Penn State. I'd kind of put him in that mix too. We're just kind of depending where he lands. I could see him there. But so for me, Bowers, JT Sanders, Ben Snott, Cade Stover. And then, for me, 5, I have Jaheim Bell, Nesbitt, number 6 here. Go Tar Heels. I have Dallin Hawker, number 7, Theo Johnson, 9, Theo Johnson, 8, Jared Wiley, 9, and then after that, that's kind of where for me, I'm like, I got a few other guys like Brevin Spanford, A.G. Barner, Austin Stogner, but I that's only for like those sickos that play in the 20-team tight end premium leagues with like deep taxi squad spots. Like I'm not really imagining any there. Let's see what's Joe got for us. Any worry? So we talked about this, and for us, I'm not worried that he's going to be the next Pitt. He's just different. He's built different, man.
He is built differently, and I'm still going down with the ship with Kyle Pitts. I still think you get a competent quarterback in Atlanta, and I'm sorry, Desmond Ridder, that's not you, and get a better play scheme around him. And I think Kyle Pitts this dude set the record for the most receiving yards ever as a rookie tight end, and then he just fell off because the offense around him changed. So I still like Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. So I still believe, and he was playing hurt last year too. It sounds like he was more hurt than they let on too. It sounds like after the season.
And I think Brock Bowers is a can't miss tight end prospect, and he will not. Kyle Pitts is an athletic unicorn. There are not many people on planet Earth who win like he wins. Whereas Brock Bowers, he's undersized for a tight end, honestly, but he just is so physical underneath, and he catches so many balls that another one, he can win at all 3 levels of the field, which is so rare for a tight end. That he can win. You told me you ran Kyle Pitts up the seam and he caught a 25-yard pass up the field. That's possible, but he can also dominate. For a guy who I said is undersized, he can dominate underneath because he knows how to use his body and shield off defenders. I think that I would love to see him get drafted to Tennessee. I think Tennessee would be a great fit for him early on. I know a lot of people think that the Chargers are going to be interested in. We haven't seen Harbaugh use a tight end. He does. He uses a tight end, but that one would be.
I remember the Vernon Davis days was always wanting more from Harbaugh's tight ends. We see Vernon Davis just make these crazy plays, and it's like, okay, cool. Why did he only get 3 targets this game? Like,
and that would be my concern is if he drafts him early, and I think he's going to go offensive line. I think he's going to want to build from the line from what we've seen in the Michigan, and you even mentioned going back to the San Francisco days. I think he'll take line early. But if he does take a tight end in Brock Bowers, I don't think that's the best fit for him. So
yeah.
Said a lot of tight end projection is fit, and until we know some of that, it's kind of hard to project some of this.
Yes, they were saying all this, and what's going to be funny now is he's going to get drafted to the Steelers, and then Arthur Smith is going to use Darnell Washington over him and Pat Freiermuth, because that would be how it would work. Arthur Smith would just destroy.
Don't break my heart.
Let's see. Oh man, see, yeah, this is a robbery right here. Like even if it's like any type of format, Pitts for Godwin in the 406. Like, yeah, that's a slam for the Pitt side.
Absolutely. I would take Pitts in that one 100% of the time. And think twice about it, because Chris Godwin's getting a little older. Still don't trust the quarterback play always in Tampa Bay. I know Baker looked good last year, and I think they're going to give him a massive contract.
Yep.
Not sure that I trust that, and I think it can only be a better situation for Pitts from here on out.
Yeah. And then the last one we got here. Who I don't know about this one. Brenton Strange over the top two, because he's in Jacksonville, right? And like, so they still have Evan Ingram there ahead of him. I think he's locked in for 2 more years. I'm pretty sure he just caught like 108 passes. So I don't know about that. I think Brenton Strange, for me, he would kind of be in like the Nesbitt, Dallin Hawker type range for me, probably maybe a little bit below that. I would say like kind of in between Hawker and Theo Johnson, maybe. That sound right? Or is that even a little too high?
No, that's probably right. So yeah, I'd take Sinnott still over Brenton Strange. I think I'd take Cade Stover over Brenton Strange. But yeah, he's in that Holker, Nesbitt, Bell range for me. I like Brenton Strange too, but like you said, we already know that Brenton Strange is going, and sure, they use Evan Ingram as a big slot essentially anyways, but he's still going to be, Brenton Strange at best is the second option among tight ends. And I don't know if they'll bring back Calvin Ridley, but I do think that Evan Ingram is going to be locked in for a couple of years there. And sure, yeah, could Brenton Strange be great in 2-3 years? Absolutely, yes. That's
absolutely.
He's very physically gifted, but just realize that I don't think it's going to be this season and probably not next year yet either.
Awesome, man. Well, any last rookies that we haven't touched on in the last 2 shows you want to throw one last shout out on?
I mentioned Jamari Thrash, Brendan Rice at receiver. I feel like I can talk more receivers. I like Brendan Rice, Jerry's son. I think that he's very physical down the field. Have you done Isaiah Williams from Illinois? Have you watched any Isaiah Williams from Illinois? Another receiver.
No, he is in my, like, I have, so he's up next with, like, I got like him, Jordan Whittington, Zachary Franklin, as like kind of guys that are like in my queue of guys to watch. But no, the last one that I've gotten down to watch would be Moose Muhammad, and then Jamari Thrash, Nia Smith. So that's kind of where I've cut off. So I have him just down in that very bottom tier, but I haven't watched enough to really have a strong opinion on him either way.
Let me know what you think, because I like some of the things I see out of Isaiah Williams. That's
Like
probably a slot only option in the NFL, but Kyle Phillips is with Tennessee. That's who I have him actually very similarly scored to. Okay. Kind of somebody who can win underneath. And so I have Isaiah Williams, I don't know, just outside my top 20, I think, but I might have to watch a little more there, because I do think there's a potential for more out of him.
Yeah. Okay. I got him highlighted. I'll move him up next. And then last guy that I just kind of want to give a little shout out to, Luke McCaffrey. Dude handled a huge chunk of the offense at Rice over there. He's got that NFL bloodline. Like, I don't think he's going to be as good as his brother, or maybe probably even his dad, but just a guy to kind of keep in there for your 4th and your 5th round picks right there. Like, just a name to monitor. I could see him making it on as a depth receiver, and then wouldn't be shocked if he's like an Andre Isobis type guy that at the end of year 1, you're like, oh man, who's that guy that just stole a touchdown down there? Wouldn't be completely shocked. So just a deeper league guy, 16-team league guy I'm looking at there.
Yeah. So Luke McCaffrey was a quarterback recruit at Nebraska, and it didn't work out, but that's impressive draft capital. And then moved to Rice, transitioned to receiver, and he's got some good hands. Luke McCaffrey has some good hands. Like you said, the bloodlines are there. I think an NFL team will see him as a do everything type of weapon more so than a traditional receiver. I think, like I said, this guy was a quarterback. So if you told me an NFL team found a way to get him 5-10 touches a game, and some of it was maybe running, some of it was catching, some of it was trick plays where, put him in the backfield, he can still throw, I'm sure. So I think an NFL team will like Luke McCaffrey. I'm not ready to draft Luke McCaffrey, I'm sure, on any team, but I agree. I like Luke McCaffrey too.
Good one. And then he kind of touched on it quickly, Frank Gore. It's all this talk about this NFL bloodlines that made Frank Gore Jr. pop in your head, huh, Jamie?
Yeah, I did. I like another one. Frank Gore, do everything at Southern Miss. So there were times in his, I don't know if it was his junior, I get thrown off by the eligibilities because of the COVID year. I always want to say junior year, but I get thrown off. So last year, 2022, there was times when Will Hall was the coach at Southern Miss and they didn't have a quarterback player, and Frank Gore would line up essentially Wildcat 80% of the snaps and would lead the team in running and receiving and quarterback play. I know that I remember his bowl game from last season. He ran for almost 300 yards. So Frank Gore is just really undersized. I think he's listed about 5'8", 180.
190, yeah, 190 at tops, yeah.
Yeah, but he can catch the ball. He can run. It's kind of like a Deuce Vaughn last year. Not quite that small, but I think Deuce Vaughn went early day 3. I think Frank Gore's probably going to be a third day 3 pick in the NFL draft.
Mhm.
And he's probably going to be limited to essentially pass catching work, which isn't, I mean, those are valuable touches if he gets them, but it's going to be another one. I want to see where he lands before I'm too in on Frank Gore. I have him at, I think,
makes sense. He's
16
my RB16 where I have him.
I think that's exactly where I have him. 16 or 17.
About that right range there. Awesome, man. Well, hey, CK, man, I appreciate you doing this with me. Like, I always come away feeling like I've learned a few things every time we sit here and do these breakdowns, even though I've just got done watching film on these guys. So I appreciate it. You know, you got a lot of stuff coming up, you know, on top of draft season. It's fantasy baseball time. So this is kind of like your wheelhouse. What all do you have coming out? Where can people find you? And then, yeah, what else do you guys, what are you working on right now?
Oh, you can follow me at COPIEPS. So every week I do the In This League War Room podcast, which is NFL Draft Talk. We record it Tuesday. It usually comes out Thursday with Scott Bogman. And lately we did position breakdowns and we recapped the Senior Bowl. We were doing team needs. So last week we did the first 17 NFL teams, kind of went through the roster. It was a long show. This week we'll do the other bottom half of the first round. I have some baseball articles coming out on Fantasy Pros and Fantasy Six Pack. And then, yeah, just keep updating my rankings. We'll see the combine this week, and then I'll probably go through and spruce up my rankings a little bit based off some new information we have.
Yeah, well, I think once we get through the combine, a little bit more info, I want to do like a live mock draft, get a bunch of us Fantasy Six Pack guys together, do like a mock draft. I think that'd be fun to come on and do a show and do one of those live.
Yeah.
So
let me know.
Sir, perfect. Awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming here. Everybody, before you head out, like we said at the start of the show, make sure you head over to fantasy6pack.net/plans, become an all access member, come hang out with us. And then the fun doesn't end when we hit end stream here in a second. You can come chat with us and hang out with us in the Discord forum and we can keep the party going. But yeah, appreciate you guys all tuning in. Follow me at Dyno NFL. Pretty much everything I do is going to go through Fantasy Six Pack, and then I'm going to go ahead and tweet that out through there, so you'll be able to catch everything there. And then Bogman, he's awesome. Yeah, we just got Hunter over here too. He's been great too as well. But yeah, man, so appreciate everybody tuning in here, and we'll be back next Monday. What do I have next Monday? I don't even remember. I don't know. I'll let you guys know on Twitter. I don't remember what I'm doing next week, but I have it all planned out somewhere. But awesome, man. We'll talk to you guys later.
See ya.